The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell starts right now. Hey, Lawrence.
Hey, Jen, after that horrible incident at Old Dominion University in Virginia and the attack on the synagogue in Michigan, Senator Gary Peters of Michigan will be our first guest tonight. We'll get his reaction to the situation in Michigan.
He's such a great guest to have on a night like this, his expertise and also obviously his connection to Michigan. I look forward to listening and watching.
Thanks, Jen. Thank you. Well, no one insults Donald Trump's voters more viciously than Donald Trump. No one makes it harder for committed Trump voters to believe in Donald Trump than Donald Trump. The rest of us knew Donald Trump was lying on Monday when he urged oil tankers and other vessels to take the chance of going through the Strait of Hormuz because Donald Trump said, there's nothing to be afraid of. Those were his exact words. There's nothing to be afraid of. So how does it feel tonight? If you're a Trump voter who believed that lie from Donald Trump Monday night and you watch the ships engulfed in flames in the Strait of Hormuz where Donald Trump said, there's nothing to be afraid of. Viewers of this program knew on Monday night there was something to be afraid of. They knew that that would happen in the Strait of Hormuz if ships tried to go through there. The insurers knew that. The shipping companies knew that. Donald Trump could never get away with that kind of lie to a single viewer of this program, and he knows it. He was only trying to lie to his own voters because he knows they are the only people who can ever believe him anywhere in the world. And as Donald Trump's troubles deepen, whether it's about the Epstein files or the war he has started in Iran, his lies just become harder and harder to believe, and all the more insulting to his own voters, who are left with the impossible mental feat of trying to believe their dear leader. And in the middle of that struggle to believe Donald Trump, they have been repeatedly and savagely insulted and treated like education-resistant 10-year-old boys by Donald Trump. Donald Trump is pumping out videos not smart enough to be called childish, that are aimed at his voters to inspire their support of his war. Those videos tell you exactly what Donald Trump thinks of his voters. If I created these videos and suggested that this is the way Donald Trump's voters see war, I would understandably be accused of insulting Donald Trump's voters. Millions of them would come after me on social media. The Trump propaganda TV channels would relentlessly attack me for days, for weeks, for insulting and demeaning Donald Trump's viewers by claiming that they would be impressed and inspired by this as a depiction of Donald Trump's war. NFL players have objected to Donald Trump's idiotic depiction of war as a game. During the Vietnam War, there was some thoughtful comment about how football, a game of violent territorial gain, might serve and promote acceptance of the American government engaging in attempts at violent and territorial gain in Vietnam. But that comment was mostly dismissed as leftist fantasy. But here is a right-wing Republican government very specifically claiming that war is football, or football is war, or if you love football, you should love war. Think of how stupid you have to be to watch that video and think it's cool. You have to be stupid enough to work in the Trump White House to think that. You have to be Donald Trump to think that. Donald Trump firmly believed that his voters are that stupid. He believed that, and so he said, let's do this video. And he keeps coming up with these videos. He keeps them coming. Donald Trump's White House put out a video early in his war filled with imagery created in Hollywood by opponents of Donald Trump who object to being used in Donald Trump's war propaganda videos. And those images include the glorification of TV's most famous fictional drug dealer. Vince Gilligan, the brilliant creator of Breaking Bad, never intended to glorify the high school teacher turned meth dealer, played brilliantly by the Emmy-winning actor Bryan Cranston. But Donald Trump wants you to admire that character and think of him that way. Donald Trump wants you to think that he is as cool as and as scary as a meth dealer in waging his war.
You can't conceive of what I'm capable of!
Finishing this fight.
Yeah, I'm thinking I'm back.
I'm here to fight for truth and justice in the American way.
I am the danger.
Time to find out.
Maximum effort. Here it comes. Now this.
Flawless victory.
Only the sickest minds could possibly come up with that. Imagine how stupid you have to be to depict your war that way. Imagine how stupid you have to be to work in the White House that is producing that video in dishonoring real military service in the process while Donald Trump's war continues. The parents and friends and loved ones of the American military on duty in the Middle East tonight want to think that the commander-in-chief is a serious person whose every waking moment is devoted to the safety of the American military that he put in harm's way. In past wars, parents and loved ones of members of the military hung on every word that the commander-in-chief spoke in the hope of being able to cling to the confidence that the soldiers they loved would be coming home safely. And now, tonight, those families are given the stupidest propaganda videos in the history of propaganda anywhere in the world. And today, Donald Trump released a video designed to appeal to children who will not have the right to vote until he is long dead. And when you think you have seen the depths of Donald Trump's depravity, he comes up with something like this that insults every single Trump voter out there who is trying to support Donald Trump's vision of his war.
Slam dunk!
Imagine if the Democratic Party put that video out today and said, this is the way Trump voters see the Trump war. Imagine if the Democratic Party said, this is the way Donald Trump sees his war. Imagine the outrage. There would be weeks of outrage on the Fox propaganda channel. If any Democrat ever insulted every Trump voter by saying Trump voters see the Trump war the way preschoolers might see it. New York Times television critic James Poniewozik writes, the meme videos suggest that war is a movie and that movies are war, and so are sports and games, that American culture's whole run of fireballs, smackdowns, and shoot-'em-ups is of one piece with the administration's militainment aesthetic. It used to be only strident detractors of pop culture who argued that macho entertainments were priming their audiences for war. Now that's simply the implicit position of the White House. The criticism that Donald Trump and the incompetents working for him in the White House have encountered since putting out these videos has only encouraged them to put out more of them, because that's the way their perversity works. They must be surprised that their propaganda videos, the stupidest ones in history, have not won them support for their war. No American war has ever faced as much opposition in this country as Donald Trump's war has faced in the first weeks of this war. And wars do not get more popular in America as they continue. And once again, Donald Trump said something that no other president has ever said about war. Quote, anytime I want it to end, it will end. That apparently means it will end when gasoline prices have gone too high for too long, or the stock market has gone too low for too long. But it will not end on the terms Donald Trump originally demanded, unconditional surrender. Today, the new 56-year-old Ayatollah Khomeini issued a written statement saying, every member of the nation who is martyred by the enemy constitutes a separate case in the file of revenge. Since Donald Trump said there was nothing to be afraid of in the Strait of Hormuz, the New York Times reports at least 16 oil tankers, cargo, and other commercial ships have been attacked in the Persian Gulf since the U.S.-Israeli war against Iran began nearly 2 weeks ago. Iran has claimed responsibility for several of the attacks. Donald Trump continues to prove to the world that he will tell any lie as he continues to insult the intelligence of his supporters with statements like this.
The Straits are in great shape. We've knocked out all of their boats. They have some missiles, but not very many. I think we're in very good shape.
The International Energy Agency said the war in the Middle East is creating the largest supply disruption in the history of the global oil market. That's Donald Trump's definition of great shape. Imagine being a Trump voter tonight and watching him say that, and knowing that he's saying that in the belief that you, the Trump voter, will be stupid enough to believe him. Donald Trump's energy secretary is the first energy secretary in history to issue a public lie about war. Energy Secretary Christopher Wright had to delete a tweet Tuesday in which he said that the United States Navy had escorted a ship through the Strait of Hormuz. The stock market jumped on that seemingly good news for the market before the Energy Secretary had to delete that post without explanation, to which the stock market then declined. Today, the Energy Secretary said the United States Navy is not ready to escort oil tankers through the Strait of Hormuz.
It'll happen relatively soon, but it can't happen now. We're simply not ready. All of our military assets right now are focused on destroying Iran's offensive capabilities and the manufacturing industry that supplies their offensive capabilities.
Imagine being a Trump voter watching that today after Donald Trump lied about it last week when he said the United States Navy will begin escorting tankers through the Strait of Hormuz as soon as possible. Last week, Donald Trump promised Navy escorts for every ship going through the Strait of Hormuz, every single one of them. And the entire shipping industry knew that that was a lie when he said it. And now the United States Navy is admitting they are incapable of escorting a single ship through the Strait of Hormuz. What's it like to be a Trump voter tonight who believed Donald Trump would suddenly become the mastermind of international safe shipping and keep the oil supply flowing through the Strait of Hormuz? What is that like? He lied to Trump voters. His lies are designed only for Trump voters. He knows the rest of us don't believe him. He insults the intelligence of Trump voters every day relentlessly. What does that feel like as history unfolds in front of the Trump voter, proving Donald Trump's lie from one day to the next? Ryan Clark is in that football video that Donald Trump released, pretending football is war or war is football. Ryan Clark was a Pittsburgh Steelers defensive back who delivers one of the hard hits in that video. He said he thinks the Trump video is disgusting and despicable.
For one, to have Tropic Thunder and football highlights on a video about war is one of the more insensitive things that I've ever seen. There are families here in our country whose loved ones have decided to give their life to fight for our rights and our freedoms, who don't see war as a sport. War doesn't deserve a highlight film. For Tropic Thunder to be a part of it, war is not a comedy. And for these people to be risking their lives, not for our safety as much as for someone else's agenda. For our regime to be as unserious, as unprofessional, as laughable, and as illegitimate as our leadership is right now is embarrassing. And it tells you the difference between a public servant and a reality star, right? Because the reality star needs everybody to know at all times, oh, look at me, look at the attention I'm garnering, we're doing this for me. The public servant stands at attention for 45 minutes in a salute because he understands what those soldiers who gave their lives have done for our country. And I think we've lost 100% any credibility. We've lost all decorum. We've lost all integrity. We've lost all character. And I believe that the latest White House post, or the White House post involving myself and other NFL players, is absolutely disgusting and despicable.
Disgusting and despicable. That's the way every Trump voter should feel about that video that Donald Trump created to insult them. Leading off our discussion tonight is Democratic Senator Gary Peters of Michigan. He is the ranking member of the Homeland Security Committee in the Senate and also a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee. And Senator Peters, we were shocked early today by the attack in Old Dominion University in Virginia, followed quickly, it seemed, on the clock by the attack on the synagogue in Michigan. What is the situation there in Michigan?
Well, you're right. It certainly was a horrific attack. We had a man basically drive his vehicle through the front doors of a synagogue, drive down the hall. We're still trying to get more information, but he may have had some accelerants in that vehicle because a fire started, clearly to cause incredible damage. And while he did that, you had children in a daycare center. And it had not been for some incredibly courageous security guards that immediately engaged that driver, that you likely would have had lives lost. But it's certainly shaken the community, as it should, because we all believe that when we are in a place of worship, whether it's a synagogue, a church, or a mosque, that we are safe, but that's not the world we live in right now. And we know that we actually have to harden those facilities that in the past have always been a sanctuary.
Senator, in the briefings that the Trump team has delivered about the war in Iran, have they described anything that they have done in the anticipation of possible increased terror threats in the United States as a result of the war?
No, they haven't, and we have asked. And in fact, right now we're trying to get more information from the Department of Homeland Security and others as to what is that risk, how are we prepared for it, and we cannot get that information. But even more importantly than the fact that I can't get that information is that we're seeing no information being put out to our local police and our communities. You know, they are literally on the front line when it comes to keeping us safe each and every day. In the past, the Department of Homeland Security has been about communicating with local authorities, understanding what the risk environment is, and trying to get a sense of what they should be prepared for. They're not getting any information, and yet we know without question that the Iranians are engaged in terrorist activities. They've done that for years and years. So it's likely that we could see those kinds of activities in our country. And the other threat, which I'm worried about, and it may be perhaps the largest threat to the homeland, are cyber attacks. Cyber attacks that can cause a great deal of problems. In fact, we had a cyber attack just recently on the west side of the state of Michigan. A major company was hit, and it's likely that it's related to the Iranian government that's engaged in these cyber attacks. And yet we have a situation where the Trump administration basically fired about 1/3 of all of our cyber professionals in CISA before this war. This is an agency that was already understaffed to protect us from cyber attacks, and they've laid off 1/3 of folks there. So they've actually made our country less safe and are not leaning into what is a real threat that we all have here in the homeland.
So we all heard Donald Trump say that the Strait of Hormuz was safe. That's the way he began the week, said there's nothing to be afraid of in running shipping through there. We now see the ships in flames that made the attempt to do it. Most ships, more than 99% of them said there's no way we're going to try to even get through it. But is that kind of statement that he made about the Strait of Hormuz applicable to the way this administration is approaching domestic security during this time?
Yeah, I think it is. There is no plan in place. Back to the Straits of Hormuz, this is an international choke point that we knew would be at risk. We're seeing it play out. I've been talking about it since the very beginning. We have over 1,000 ships that can't transit. Gas prices are up. We've got prices of liquefied natural gas. We have fertilizers. A third of all the fertilizers come through the Gulf. And this is at a time when our farmers are ready to plant. The economic impact of this war, in addition to the amount of money the taxpayers are paying, which I think you mentioned earlier, which is a massive number, will probably be very small relative to the impact to the world economy and basically everyday folks here in the United States. And what was particularly striking to me, we had a briefing this week with key folks from the Department of Defense, and I asked this question. That you've got this major choke point. This could be an international economic disaster. What sort of plans are in place to be able to reopen the Straits of Hormuz? And I was actually stunned because the reaction I got is, well, we're working on those plans now. You don't work on those plans now. You work on those plans before the first shot is taken. I've served in the Navy. I've done work at the Naval War College. We've done war plans. Something as critical as the Straits of Hormuz, that better be in your plans before the first shot is fired, because there's the damage that can escalate. And every day that you delay in the Straits of Hormuz, and if you see production shut down, for example, which we're seeing, you can't just turn the spigot on. We're talking weeks of disruption. Even if this were to end today, it's still weeks of disruption. And every day that goes by will hurt everyday people all across our world, but in particular, Americans.
Well, what you heard in that briefing seems to align with the New York Times reporting that said that the Donald Trump White House was surprised that there was any problem in the Strait of Hormuz, that they had no idea, they had no expectation that there would be any problem with oil shipping as a result of this war. And the Times reports that they were surprised by that as it developed during the war.
It's absolutely ridiculous to think they would be surprised, but I think you're absolutely right. They didn't anticipate that. For some reason, they thought they could go in for a day, perhaps, and a couple days. This is the Trump administration. I'm confident that our military folks probably really question all of this. They're pretty sophisticated folks, but those are the orders they got from the commander in chief. And he thought you just go in, you decapitate the head of state, and that's going to be it. That's not Iran. And folks who study Iran and have studied the really complex politics of Iran and the military dynamics knew that this is not going to be a one and done situation, and it's going to have major ramifications for a long period of time. So I'm shocked at the fact that they did not put that kind of thinking in. And it's demonstrated, to your point, it's demonstrated almost every day when it comes to what are your goals in this war. It changes daily, and it tends to move around. There's no exit strategy. There's no idea how we actually come to some sort of victory, however that's defined. And in the meantime, you're causing absolute chaos to the world economy, and you're going to be hurting people for a long period of time.
Michigan Senator Gary Peters, thank you very much for starting off our coverage tonight.
Great to be with you.
Okay. Coming up today, Donald Trump said the single stupidest thing ever said by any American politician, president or anyone else, about oil prices. That's next. Today, Donald Trump said the single stupidest thing ever said by any American politician about the price of oil. Donald Trump actually said these words: "When oil prices go up, we make a lot of money. Well, sure, if you're an oil company, that's true only for oil companies. When oil prices go up, the rest of us actually lose money by paying higher prices for everything, not just gasoline. Mortgage interest rates have gone up each week of Donald Trump's war and will continue to go up. CNBC reports the Middle East conflict has disrupted trade through the Strait of Hormuz, and its impact could ripple far beyond the energy markets, risking a spike in global food prices. The strait is not only a key artery for oil and gas shipments, but also for fertilizers critical to global agriculture. Analysts told CNBC disruptions could feed through to higher farming costs, reduced crop yields, and ultimately more expensive food. As Senator Peters just told us, 1/3 of the world's fertilizer supply passes through the Strait of Hormuz, which is now stuck. MS Now's Will McDuffie spoke with a Pennsylvania farmer about the fertilizer crisis.
The war has caused a lot of price chaos already at the gas pump, and it's also affecting fertilizer prices?
Absolutely, yes. We're hearing quotes of prices being up since the war started about 15 to 25% over where they were before they started. And prices coming into this year were already up about 15% compared to what they were in 2025. So that's quite a big jump in a short period of time.
With inflation now pushing even higher thanks to Donald Trump's war, the New York Times reports 1/3 of Americans, an estimated 82 million people, say they are making sacrifices, including skipping meals or driving less to pay for health care. According to a new survey released on Thursday, in the survey, 15% of individuals said they had borrowed money in the last year to pay for medical expenses, while another 11% said they had skipped a meal. About 29% said they had postponed a vacation, while 26% said they had put off surgery or other medical treatment. Joining us now is Democratic Congressman Brendan Boyle of Pennsylvania. He is the ranking member on the House Budget Committee, and he's a member of the powerful House Ways and Means Committee. Congressman Boyle, that last point about health care, how is that affected by what the Republicans did last year in their budget bill?
Yeah, it really cannot be repeated enough that just 8 months ago, they passed their big tax bill, which included the largest tax cuts for billionaires in American history, paid for by the largest healthcare cuts in American history, approximately $900 billion worth. Congressional Budget Office, the official nonpartisan source of information when it comes to legislation, they have estimated that just over 15 million Americans will lose their health care as a result of Trump's bill. And let's not forget, most of that damage hasn't occurred yet. The big bulk of the health care cuts will be phased in beginning in December of this year, when you see the Medicaid cuts begin to take effect.
So Democrats have been saying that Donald Trump cut health care to fund giant tax cuts to the richest people in the world, the richest Americans in history. Many of them, it turns out, friends of Jeffrey Epstein. But he also has the spending priority of, let's do the most expensive war in history after taking health care away from millions of Americans.
Yeah, so first, this is not exaggeration. It's not hyperbole or even opinion. It is a fact that in the very same piece of legislation, those large tax cuts that mostly went to the top 1% were paid for by the largest cuts to healthcare in American history, in addition to the largest cuts to nutrition assistance and education programs and a few other areas as well. So that is a fact, and frankly, it's one of the many reasons why Republicans will badly lose the congressional midterms this November. But now you add on top of all of those healthcare increased costs that are starting to take effect, you have the ramifications of this war. We're 13 days into it. My back of the envelope math shows that we have spent at least $20 to $25 billion on this war. For roughly that same amount of money, you would have been able to fully extend the Obamacare tax credits for the next year.
With the price of oil going up, that pushes up the price of everything. Every single product we use is transported to us somehow. And that transportation now is more expensive because the price of oil has gone up. And there's no telling at this point how far up it could go.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So the costs are both direct and indirect. The direct costs are obvious every time that we gas up. I mean, literally today, I drove by the gas station here in the Philadelphia area that I use. A week and a half ago, it was showing $2.99 a gallon. It's now showing $3.59. So that's an obvious and direct increase as a result of this war. But the indirect cost is what we're going to be paying for consumer goods that increasingly go up because they have to pay for the increase in transportation costs as well as component costs that they will now be bearing the burden of.
Congressman Brendan Boyle, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
And coming up today, Republicans in the United States Senate refuse to vote for funding TSA, so you can expect long TSA lines at airports to get longer. Senator Adam Schiff, who pushed for that TSA funding on the Senate floor today, will join us next. If you're headed to an airport this weekend, as I am, we are going to face very long TSA lines because once again today, Republicans refuse to vote for funding the TSA. TSA agents are not getting paid now because their budget is not active. Senate Republicans have attached conditions to fully funding the TSA, which include unprecedented increases in funding for Donald Trump's domestic invasion forces of ICE and Border Patrol agents. California Senator Adam Schiff said this.
Senate Democrats have been clear, not another dime for these immigration enforcement agencies until we see real reforms, until they take off the masks and put on the body cams, until they're held to the same standard as a neighborhood cop on the beat, until their standard of no judicial warrant, no problem, is torn out of the training manual. That is not too much to ask. In the aftermath of Americans watching DHS storming city apartment buildings like they were behind enemy lines, or ICE dragging citizens from their homes, or CBP gunning down Americans in cold blood in the street, this cannot be too much to ask. We're seeing families torn apart, citizens detained without medical care, fathers and mothers, grandfathers and grandmothers, aunts and uncles, children detained because of the color of their skin or the language they speak or where they work. We see DHS spending $140 million on assault weapons, Glocks and tasers, and countless more on building massive new detention centers. And so we are insisting on reform. We reject the false choice the majority would give us that we cannot reform ICE until we agree to give ICE billions more. These cannot be the only two choices.
Joining us now is Democratic Senator Adam Schiff of California. He is a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. Okay, let's begin with, there's two things happening here. There's what you want to vote for, and there's what Republicans want to vote for. Democrats are out on the Senate floor saying, let's fund TSA. Let's get the TSA agents paid so we can take care of the airports, get everything straightened out at the airports, get them paid. Republicans say no.
They say no. They say until we get more money for ICE and more money for Border Patrol, we're not going to reopen TSA. We're not going to reopen FEMA. We had another motion today that Alex Padilla and I offered to reopen FEMA. Let's continue to hammer out serious reforms of ICE and Border Patrol, but let's not make the public suffer by not funding this disaster relief agency or TSA or the Coast Guard. But no, their response is, we're not going to do anything until we get more money for ICE, and we are not about to go along with the reforms that you're seeking.
So people standing in TSA lines tomorrow morning and all day should know that the reason those lines are long is that Republicans have repeatedly this week refused to vote to fund TSA. Democrats all want to vote to fund TSA, and Republicans are refusing to do it.
That's exactly right. We had that vote again today. Let's fund TSA while we work on everything else. And they said no, not without funding ICE and Border Patrol. They're not willing to fund TSA. I think it's unsustainable. They're losing this argument. They've lost the argument over ICE and over Border Patrol. People have seen the terrible damage that's been done in our streets and the mayhem, the chaos, the bloodshed. They want changes. And what we're demanding is, frankly, just the same standards we hold our local police department to. We don't want people wearing masks. We don't want people indiscriminately grabbing people off the street because of how they look or the language they speak or where they work. We want them to not use excessive force. And when there is excessive force used, we want an independent investigation. This is not too much to ask, but apparently for the Republicans it is, and they're willing to keep TSA unfunded. They're willing to make all those agents work without pay until they can get more money for those agencies.
So the Republican position is we're going to hold TSA hostage to ICE. We will not fund TSA unless you all agree to fund ICE at unprecedentedly high levels. And it's a very common legislative approach to say, okay, let's vote on the pieces we agree on. We agree, because basically the Republicans and Democrats agree on funding for TSA. If it was a standalone bill, it would go through with at least 90 votes, wouldn't it?
It absolutely would. Yeah. And you're right. And
so it's very common to do that, pass that thing with 90 votes or unanimously, and then we'll start working on the part we disagree on. You want less money for ICE than they do. They want this. That's a normal legislative process.
That is exactly right. And what's more, Republicans in that big, ugly bill gave ICE more money than the FBI gets, more money than, frankly, all the federal law enforcement agencies put together. They're already massively funded. Their budget just for guns and other lethal and non-lethal material increased by 360%. I mean, it's gone up dramatically. So they've got plenty of money and they're plenty well armed. What they don't have is basic rules that require them to abide by the law. In this area, we've had court after court, Republican appointed judges, Trump judges, among others, say that they have never seen such rampant violation of court orders. Well, we want that to stop, and the Republicans should want that to stop too. But apparently, they're not willing to cross the president. And until they're willing to accede to the needs of their constituents and until they're more afraid, frankly, of their voters than they are of the president, we may be at an impasse.
We have to squeeze in a commercial break here, but I want to talk to you about the other interesting thing that happened in the Senate today, which is the Senate actually did vote on something, a big bipartisan vote, something that Donald Trump didn't want. We're going to be right back with Senator Adam Schiff. We're back with Senator Adam Schiff. A big development in the Senate today on a couple of levels. First of all, an 89-10 vote on a bill that the New York Times says is the largest piece of housing legislation in 36 years. Bipartisan bill, Republican Tim Scott, Senator Elizabeth Warren getting together legislatively. But Donald Trump had issued an order to the Republican Senate. They must not vote on anything in the Senate until they have voted on what he calls the SAVE Act, the bill that requires you to have a passport to vote in America. John Thune, Republican leader, just defied Donald Trump and did it.
Yes, well, Thune understands that he's got members who are deeply at risk. A year ago, it was hard to see how Democrats could flip the Senate. Now it is very easy to see the pathway to do that. He sees it as well as we do. And Donald Trump can say what Donald Trump wants to say, but Thune's obligation is to his members. And so we had this big vote on a meaningful housing bill. And to me, the most remarkable thing about all of this was Donald Trump, according to Speaker Mike Johnson, said this week in a conversation between the two of them that people don't give a blank about housing. Now, we don't know whether that blank was an F blank or an S blank, but for
it's only the most important thing in their lives.
Yes. Well, and I hear this all the time in California, of all the affordability issues, the inability to afford rent or your mortgage or, acquire a new home if you're a first-time home buyer. This is at the top of people's concerns, as well as the epidemic of homelessness. And you have the president saying people don't give a whatever about that. That's the kind of thing you say if you're spending a lot of your time building a ballroom, tearing down parts of the White House to build a ballroom, or you're spending all your time at Mar-a-Lago and you don't know that people don't actually all live at a place like Mar-a-Lago, or you're out there on the golf course. He is literally spending more time on his ballroom than he is trying to figure out how to help people afford housing, because he doesn't give a rat's ass about housing. He doesn't expect anyone else to do so. But nevertheless, I think the Republicans as well as Democrats understand affordability is not a hoax. And the longer they go without addressing this, the worse their prospects are going to be in November.
We're in March, and John Thune is worried enough about holding on to the Senate that he is defying Donald Trump, as he did today, defying Donald Trump and having a vote that Donald Trump ordered him not to have. I can't imagine that there won't be more of these John Thune moments between now and November.
I think there will inevitably be. As we get closer and closer to the midterms, as the numbers look worse and worse for the Republicans, they will start defying the president on, I would say, small to mid-sized things. This was actually a fairly big thing, but that we may see more and more. Now, still, this bill, while it passed overwhelmingly in the Senate, is in trouble in the House. Mike Johnson and his right-wing faction are still going to fight this bill. Many of them have adopted Trump's credo that until we can disenfranchise people, we're not going to build new housing. So there's no guarantee this bill passes, but I certainly hope that it does. It is such a pressing need. But I think you're right. I think we're going to see more defiance of Trump the closer we get to November.
And as Donald Trump continues to pursue the most expensive war in American history, what does that do to Republican budget negotiations over things like Donald Trump's invasion forces here domestically, like ICE and the Border Patrol?
Well, it puts them in an awful position because the last estimate, I guess, what we got from the Pentagon was they've spent $11 billion on this war already. And that's dozens of hospitals we could have built in America. It is lots of affordable housing we could have built in America. It's increasing the costs of everything from fuel at the pump and food at the grocery store. The opportunity costs are huge, and the American people understand that. And Trump's own base didn't want this. He campaigned on putting an end to these endless wars. So it is very difficult for them to explain. And you see even some of the MAGA senators on the Hill saying, the president would be wise to bring this to an end, to basically find anything he can declare as victory. Now, that got more difficult when the next Ayatollah is the son of the last Ayatollah. But nevertheless, Republicans are really feeling the heat, and they should.
Senator Adam Schiff, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
We'll be right back. Senator Adam Schiff gets tonight's last word.